good evening, or whatever time you're listening to us. My name is Edson Ochoa, and welcome to another episode of the Down in the Valley podcast. It is a sad episode to be able to host. Unfortunately, after Saturday's result, RGV FC is officially eliminated from the USL Championship Playoffs. But we actually have a lot of talk about today. Obviously, we're going to talk about certain topics related to this match. But I felt today that it was important to look at the nitty gritty, the analytical side, and honestly, before we say hello to our co-host Jacob, I want to bring along and have John Morrissey from USL Tactics, hop on and say hello to everyone here in Toros Nation. John, how are you? Definitely. I think the last time you were here, we were talking about last season's signings actually. Because I do remember, yeah, because that was like early 2021. So yeah, it has been a while, but you have been pretty busy so far. In these last couple of months, with USL show, you've got all these other analytical projects that you do as well. Tell us a little bit about those. Hmm. Hmm.
Reading way too much as a side job.
Yeah, it's definitely an honor to have you back here to talk to us. And I know because the reason I brought you on, John, is because obviously us as fans, we kind of get a little bit biased when we kind of want to talk about what went wrong with the games. But I think somebody that has uh, an outside view, a more analytical um, mind is I think you'll be able to see maybe some things that maybe neither Jacob nor I could see. And speaking of Jacob, let's go ahead and welcome him on. Jacob, how you doing? My bro and my co-host.
Yeah, no, not doing too bad. Looking forward for this episode. I mean, like you said, we got John Morrissey on, so couldn't be too bad, even though, of course, it's going to be a little bit down talking about an RGVFC loss. But all in all, build for next year.
So let's go ahead and get started. So, John, coming into this match, I think what surprised a lot of people was how favored RGVFC was by the national media when it came to the predictions on who would get the win in the match between Colorado Springs and RGVFC. Was that favoritism warranted, or what were you thinking going into this matchup?
So, I mean, just to admit it, I had RGV winning this game. They came in, if you looked at the form across the final 10 games of the season for every team in the USL, no team had earned more points than RGV. And Colorado Springs was the side that started the season on fire. They were neck and neck with San Antonio in terms of that first place spot in the West. And they really had cratered from there. It culminated in the sale of Haji Berry off to Egypt. They hadn't really been able to settle into a consistent formation or tactical style since then. So even though they finished very well in terms of their standing in the conference, this was a Switchbacks team that seemed to have a lot of weaknesses and didn't really have an identity. And then all of a sudden that completely changed. But coming into it, I think that, I mean, I picked RGV for a reason. They seemed like they were just the better side at the moment.
Jacob, I want to get before we have John talk more his analytics about the actual match. What was your outlook for this game?
Yeah, I was going in there optimistic. I mean, you got Tyler Derrick on goal for sure. And of course, seeing that roster, or seeing the lineup basically made me feel a lot better too. It wasn't that bad of a lineup. Everybody that started deserved to start. And yeah, I was just going in there with kind of high hopes of, look, if this game stays 0-0 for a bit, it's going to be, I think, a plus for RGV FC. And well, of course, it didn't end up that way, but definitely going into it, I was more optimistic for sure, thinking that RGVSC did have a slight chance, especially if they could strike early.
I know in last week's episode you mentioned that your prediction was a loss by RGV. Uh, what changed for you in between that time? First of all, why did you believe that the loss was warranted, and what kind of made you feel a little bit more optimistic closer to the date?
High altitude, and I think just being a bit of a fan of RGVFC really made me go towards, yeah, RGVFC could definitely win. And of course, us having on our special guest last week, it also helped. It's like, look, they've had a lot of stuff gone wrong, and not only did they lose to thinking of all the in teams, but it's not the one that I want to think. New Mexico United, there we go. For them, it made me think more of, well, RGVSC might have a bigger chance because they've also been able to go on the road and play well against that team like them. And of course, yeah, up in Colorado, it's different. You still have the altitude, but I was thinking, yeah, there's still a good chance for RGVFC to pull this off.
So, having said this, John, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I mean, when you think about the factors that had really powered what RGV had been doing to be so successful in the past month or two, a lot of it had come down to the play with the wingers, with what you got with Jonas Fjellbjerg, Christian Pinzon, and then the overlaps even wider than them from Akeem Ward and Jonathan Ricketts. This was a team that, when you got those defenders involved, was attacking with 5 players. You had people like Emilio Icaza in the middle, really dictating play. It was a team that could sink back into defense and then transition very effectively into the offensive half. And then they took an approach where so often Cabezas was dropping into what was effectively a center back spot in build up. So you're seating a man in the midfield, and that gave Colorado Springs an edge. At the same time, the Switchbacks played their fullbacks very deep defensively, and that sort of nullified the effect of the width that had been so effective for RGV. I think the specific personnel choice that would represent that was Tristan Hodge starting at left back. This is a Switchbacks team that has plenty of options at that spot who can get upfield with the best of them. Hodge is basically a center back at heart, and he showed that with his positioning. On the other side, Sebastian Anderson, who again is a really effective sort of wing back kind of player, just tended to sit really low in defense. They also dropped their wingers very low defensively into more of a 4-4-2 kind of shape. So Mishi Galina, who, I mean, he's got double-digit goals. He was my pick for Young Player of the Year because of what he does in attack. He was basically even with their defensive midfielders when they decided to pack it in. And because of that compactness, because of the way they were very particular about denying the wings, RGV only got 3 touches in the box for the entire match, which is really kind of a staggering assessment of how they just couldn't work past that defense. And I think that was the crux of what happened here.
I think another thing that I noticed, and I think I had mentioned it in the game against Louisville, I had mentioned that hello, can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I had mentioned was that with Louisville, RGV appeared to struggle offensively because the Louisville defense was unwilling to give neither Christian Pinzon nor Jonas Fieldberg space to work with compared to other teams. And to me, like you mentioned, with Tristan Hodge and the other outside back being so deep, uh, even if Jonathan Ricketts would come up and try to help Fieldberg or Ricky or Christian Pinzon, they were unable to find any good space. It's just like it looked to me that Colorado did their homework extremely well and tried to replicate what Louisville City had done to the Toros in HEB Park a couple of weeks ago. Do you think that is a fair assessment, or what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the baseline system that Louisville uses is sort of a 4-1-4-1 where they attack with those wingers very high up the pitch, but then drop them into the midfield line, and they play with one purely defensive-minded midfielder. And that is pretty much to a T what Colorado Springs did in this game, where Macaulay King was that defensive-minded guy in the midfield. The wingers would come deep. It can be a negative style, and I think that's why this game ended up being so tight until the tail end when it really broke open. But I do think there's a lot of validity to that comparison.
Now, what can you tell us, kind of flipping the table a little bit, what can you tell us about RGV's defense? Because it appeared that even with the advantage, and even when they had like a clear opportunity like that went just real shy of the post, like in the third minute, it seemed like even Colorado was struggling to get some decent opportunities on Tyler Derrick or Colin Miller's goal.
Sure. I mean, I think overall, RGV did a good job of slowing down what can be a really dynamic attack. A lot of that comes down to what I was talking about with Cabezas playing really deep in the midfield, where there were a lot of moments where he almost looked like a third center back. And I think that did a lot to kind of quell what Colorado Springs can generate from their wide players. So if Cabezas is dropping back that deep, that means that someone like an Akwe can burst wide to match Galena when he's making a run, for instance. It gives you a little bit more flexibility to rotate and be strong defensively until like Ricketts and Ward can recover from their attacking moves and get back and really tighten up that defense. Mm-hmm. And I think you saw that play out a lot. Generally, I think that Colorado Springs has slowed down in what they're doing offensively, where they're a little bit more willing to take a patient approach. They know that with the loss of Haji Berry, with some of the injuries they've had and the ins and outs, they aren't quite as dynamic as they were, which is why the ultimate substitution of Aaron Wheeler was so important, where he gave them a presence to really settle down in the final third, find patience, be able to kind of make these clever runs that would eventually make the Toros lose shape and let them get that 1-0 lead that would kind of serve as the thing that broke the camel's back.
Mm-hmm. I was actually about to ask you those two questions, because I was curious, number one, on what was the difference now that Hachi Berry was gone in how Colorado had adapted to playing a little bit differently. And like you mentioned, that substitution, bringing out Elvis Amo to bring in, you say it was a Wheeler?
Right? Wheeler, yeah.
Wheeler into the match, and it seemed like that it helped them kind of open up and kind of take advantage of Galena a little bit more. But Jacob, do you have any questions?
I mean, I think my only question really would be, was that first challenge on Tyler Derrick worthy of a red card? But of course, I think we all know the answer to that. And well, really, do you think let's say if that challenge does not happen and Tyler Derrick does stay in the game, even with the way that the game did play out, do you still see Colorado Springs breaking through that late in the game to get that goal?
I think there is always the question of, say what you will about the shot stopping, does the fact that you have a different goalkeeper in net affect the defenders from a mentality standpoint where they're a little bit less trusting? They take on a mentality where they feel like they have to intervene no matter what because they don't have as much solidity behind them. And I mean, one person makes a decision with that mindset, and suddenly you've got a chain reaction where everyone in the defense has to be reacting that way. So I do think that there is validity to that idea, but at the same time, the switchbacks did have the stronger offense. They had a little bit more impetus. I feel like they may have gone on and got the goal anyway, but it's an important question to be asking.
That was actually a really good question, Jacob. Really commend you for it. My other question is, so looking at how Colorado planted themselves in this particular match, what do you believe from a tactical standpoint that RGB could have done differently, whether personnel or even formation wise, that could have taken advantage of maybe some potential weaknesses that tactical positioning by Colorado presented?
Yeah, if you think about the system that Colorado Springs was running, Macaulay King as that defensive midfielder was more often than not kind of leaning to the right side of their system, which left a little bit of room for someone like a Pinzon to get involved. So I think trying to send some of your deeper midfielders over in that direction, trying to push up that way. It's a tough question to ask, though, because I think Colorado Springs really did play a pretty tight negative style where they weren't ceding a ton of room.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of difficult to ponder what can go differently in that kind of scenario. I suppose pressing harder and more aggressively. I did think that the Toros looked a little bit less sharp in that regard in this game, but yeah, that's about all I've got. I'm no Wilmer Cabrera in that regard.
Yeah, I just thought it was curious because I know Jacob and I were kind of in this discussion after the match. We were watching at the watch party, and it was like, well, could Wilmer Cabrera have done something better? Was this Wilmer Cabrera's fault that the Toros are very inoperable up on top? Obviously, hindsight is very 2020. So I just thought hopefully we'd get some feedback from someone who does a lot, like I said, a lot more of an analysis into tactics.
I think just to cut back in, I think if you look at some of the changes that were made, like bringing on Frank Lopez, for instance, maybe you do that a little bit earlier. I don't think you made any tactical subs until like the 75th, 80th minute. That doesn't give you enough time to really feel the impact of those tactical changes. So I think that would be the thing I would point to maybe as the mistake that was made, if there was one.
And honestly, it's not the first time that we have talked about the timing of the substitutions by Wilmer Cabrera this season. I know Jacob was like multiple times, so especially like during the middle and early parts of the season, where we've mentioned how he made his substitutions too late. So I thought we had gotten past that these last in these last couple of weeks, but apparently when the going got tough, he went back to being same old Wilmer, at least in that aspect. So, anything else that you want to add before we kind of look at our real quick because I know we've got like 10 minutes before you have to go. But anything you want to add about this game before we kind of talk about RGV season as a whole?
Not really. I think I'm good to transition into the kind of broader talk.
Yeah. So basically, I think one of the biggest things, and I know we've kind of talked about it in previous episodes, is how much of an improvement bringing in Fielberg and Christian Pinzon, brought to the table over Adolfo Hernandez or Frank Gaviria. But I want to get your thoughts as to why exactly these two players made such a huge impact for Wilmer Cabrera's tactics.
Yeah, so much of that early season, mid-season stretch, you saw this team playing with either two, three forwards who basically fit the bill of a very traditional kind of striker. There were exceptions, obviously. Someone like a Dylan Borkjack, who kind of lost favor mid-season, was a little bit more of that pacey winger type, but he didn't really have the goals in him. Whereas Fjellberg, Pinzon, they're certainly their wingers, I think, as a baseline position, but they're very aggressive on the dribble. They're very capable of taking players on and generating their own shots. And I think that made the attack for RGV that much more expansive in terms of width, where if you're an opponent, you can't just pack it in, play tight in the middle. So that was one thing that was important. I think Ricketts really establishing himself, bringing in Akeem Ward, those were big factors as well. And then I think just really the biggest thing for me was Emilio Icaza just stepped it up in terms of his creation in the middle. And part of that comes down to the space that his teammates were buying him. But all of those factors combined to make what was already a very good team in terms of denying good chances because of strong defending and strong team defending into one that had a real two-way game that could generate a threat at both ends. And I think that was really one of my favorite things to see across the league this year.
I think one of the things that you brought up when you mentioned about the attack was um, RGB struggled a lot when they tried to play with that set number 9, that set striker, whether it was Gaviria or Adolfo. They had a lot of problems, crossing. They had a lot of problems, sending the ball over to the striker. It just seemed like they were very incompatible. Now you're bringing a different play style with these two players. Like you mentioned, they create their own shots, opportunities inside the box, outside the box. And that really opened up a new door for them, despite not having a true number 9 for most of that second half of the season, considering that Frank Lopez was injured. I think he had fallen ill as well. Ended up coming back towards the later part of the season, and even when he was in, it seemed like Pinzon and Fielberg were able to adapt to now playing with a number 9, or at least the characteristics of Frank Lopez were a little bit more compatible with these two players. But you brought up also Jonathan Ricketts. I think for me, he has been the revelation of RGVFC this season. What are your thoughts on Jono, considering that he is a rookie fresh out of USL League One?
Yeah, he was someone who wasn't really on my radar, even amongst the players that were making the leap from League One. And he was really impressive. My data model rated him in the 93rd percentile for player value. Like he was one of the better fullbacks in the USL, no holds barred. I think what made his game so good was that it was very much a two-way proposition where he was very solid in defense. He had the pace and the strength to get up and down the flank in a really effective manner. And he's got a wicked cross on him. Very smart passer, very incisive what he's trying to do. I don't think he necessarily blows you away in any one facet of the game, but he does everything well. And that's just so important.
Jacob?
My question would be, of course, because Edson and I kind of go back and forth with this. It has nothing to do with the rest, Edson, so don't worry. But One thing is because right at the end of the season, it felt like Frank Nodarce started to find his rhythm with the team as well. And I started to be impressed with him, especially later in the season. So, I mean, what would be your take on the way that he was able to progress through Wilmer's system and all of a sudden kind of be a key player that RGVFC in some sense, especially late in that run, needed?
Yeah, he's someone who over the years really has shown flexibility playing as more of a central midfield type. He's got experience as a center back. And I think just having that two-way sensibility was really important for this team. So, I mean, the contributions that he had, especially in those later games, I was somewhat surprised not to see him in the starting 11 when it came to that playoff game. I understood the choice, but I think that he was the kind of player who, with every passing week, seemed to show that much more intelligence in the decisions he was making on and off the ball. So, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying there.
What do you think is the characteristic that makes him stand out? Because I think you mentioned something about the ball, but what do you think made him stand out, or could have been an improvement over, let's say, Wahab Akwe or Eric Pimentel?
Yeah, in terms of his statistical profile, and I don't have any numbers specifically, but he rates very effectively in terms of his tackle win rate, what he's doing in terms of his successful interventions versus the fouls he's conceding. He's a player with a real sense of when to get involved in the tackle, but at the same time, he's got a decent passing instinct. He is very progressive in what he's trying to do with his passing. So again, he's someone who doesn't blow you away in any one sense, but it's just that complete game that really sets him apart from maybe some of the more limited options, where I think Akwe is bright and direct in his passing, but maybe just less effective in terms of like his completion percentage, for instance. And I think you get a little bit more skill from Nodarse.
I have one more question before we let you go, John. But first, do you have anything else, Jacob? Do you want to ask him?
No, I think I'm good on my end.
So my final question to you, John, is because we've talked about all these positive players, but from a statistical standpoint, what positions do you think this team needs the most improvement as Wilmer Cabrera looks to prepare for next season?
So I'm a big fan of what Frank Lopez gives you. I think that he's underrated by the numbers. But for me, it has to be that striker spot where if you can bring someone in who commands the respect of an opposing defense as a real goal scoring threat, that is something that can open up the game for those aggressive wingers. And that's assuming that Pinzon and Fjellberg and whoever else come back in those roles, which is a question mark for sure.
Mhm.
But as much as I like what Lopez gives, I think he's more of a hold-up striker at the end of the day. I think missing someone who can give you 15 goals guaranteed is really the thing that has limited this team, because Cabrera has shown he can coach a defense. He can set up a team that is just not going to allow easy chances. So threading the needle up top really could set this team up for some success and some I can't talk, sustained improvement next season.
Mhm. Well, John, we definitely appreciate all of your feedback. Hopefully, our audience was able to kind of get a different point of view on everything that happened this past game. Obviously, right now with the season ending, the silly season is pretty much starting. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens going into next season. Obviously, because I did hear that now they are going to be uh, preparing this team a whole lot earlier than they did
I was
last
just
season.
gonna ask real quick, yeah, like so there's a sense that I mean this team felt like they didn't do any business until February last year. Like it's gonna be a little bit more of a normal timeline.
Yeah, from what I've been told, yes, they're actually going to start preparations. I think they mentioned like once as soon as their participation in the league ended, like they were already going to make decisions on who stayed and who's staying and who's leaving. But that's what I heard. Nothing on the record or confirmed. So, but for
Gotcha.
their sake, I really hope they actually do that. But tell our audience where they can find you on social media and all of your works again.
Yeah, at USL Tactics on Twitter, where I put most of my stuff. I mean, match recaps for basically every USL game. The USL Show podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and then read Backheeled, really good coverage. I'm there twice a week with articles about the USL. So that's the wrap.
Well, John, thank you so much for hopping on to us, hopping on with us, and hopefully it's not the last time we have you back on the show.
Yeah, excited to be back already. Thank you guys.
All right, bro. Have a good night.
Yep, see ya.
All right, so Jacob. Now let's get to the nitty gritty, the more fan sided, the more fan sided part of this episode. And obviously, we'll go ahead and talk a couple of things that happened within the match, right? A couple of key observations that I had. So, like I had mentioned to John, it seemed like in the first half, or for the first 80 some minutes, RGV was able to control Colorado well. They did not, like, especially in the first half. Like I mentioned, there was a really close call in the third minute. When that happened, I was like, "Oh shit, it's gonna be one of those games."
Yeah.
But other than that, in the first half, they only got one shot on target out of 4 total, and 2 of
Yep.
those were blocked. So even with Colin Miller on goal, having lost Tyler Derrick, the defense held their shape pretty well. The problem is this was a physical embodiment of Cabrera's slogan of or what his analogy of the blanket that's too short. It was like you cover your top, but you expose your feet, right?
Yes.
But if you cover your feet, you have your chest exposed. And it's one of those things where RGV focused so much defensively, they really didn't have a lot to bother Colorado offensively.
I 100% agree. And I mean, a little bit of, something to bring up is that the elevation for RGV, meaning in Edinburgh, there we go. Couldn't think of the name for some strange reason, but in Edinburgh, 55 feet of elevation. 55 feet. Not too bad, right? Colorado Springs is about 55,000 feet of elevation. That's just Springs. We're not talking about Snowmass, Buttermilk Mountain, any of that. No, we're just talking about one of the flattest parts of Colorado, and that's Colorado Springs and Denver. So, yeah, that air is very, very thin, is my point. And it got thinner at night. And so, yes, in any sport, no matter what, on a regular circumstance, you play defense for 45, 50, I'd say 75 plus minutes. You're going to be damn tired to try and attack. For sure, especially if you're counterattacking constantly. And that's exactly what happened. So you need reinforcements. But Wilmer stuck to Wilmer and did not want to do that. It did not feel like he really changed. I know we just talked to John Morsey about tactics, but come on.
So you bring that up, right? The fact that his first substitution was in the 75th minute.
Yes.
You bring in Frank Lopez, you take out Jonas Fjellberg, which we know Jonas Fjellberg has been one of those players that have been unable to last the 90 plus minutes, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The issue was, and I know that Eduardo Cariaga, our friend Eduardo Cariaga, who also covers the Toros, he mentioned to me during the game as we were discussing, he said, the issue is that you don't have a midfielder that is distributing the ball up on the attack. And I told him, well, you have Frank Lopez on the bench. You have, a truer number 9 compared to Ricky Reese. And it's like, yes, but who's going to feed him the balls? Right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the embodiment. Even when they brought in Gringo Torres, there really wasn't a lot of good distribution over to Frank. Obviously, you add that you get scored on the 85th minute, and all hell broke loose. But the reason I'm saying this is because I know you mentioned to me at the end of the game, Jacob, you mentioned to me that Wilmer could have done something more in this match. What was your explanation for that?
You have 5 subs. He used what, 2, 3? And they were way too late. That's my whole point. I think you make a change at the 45th minute.
3. He made 3.
There you go. Yeah, 2 or 3.
No, 4. If you want to count Tyler Derrick, it was 4.
Oh, okay. So yeah, if you want to count him, but again, we're well, now I kind of forgot about that just a little.
But it wasn't a tactical, so it doesn't really count.
So yeah, you're left with 4 subs, which is already more than we're used to. Back in 2000, we're talking 16, 17, you only had 3. So you got 2 more now, which...
Wait, was it? Because I thought in the USL back in 2016, it was still...
I don't believe it was 5 at least. I don't believe it was 5. Because yes, in the college days and in high school, you could constantly change players. You could put players back in that had played. That's,
well, it wasn't at that extent. Yeah, but I could have sworn that Ray mentioned that the USL was a little bit different when it came to substitutions back then. I just don't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, continue.
Okay. In any normal soccer federated league, you have about 3 subs and about 1 or 2 extra if it goes into extra time. Not added time, extra. So, yeah, going forward about that, it's just... So, yeah, take out Tyler Derrick because that was an injury sub. So you make a change at halftime, tactical or just a regular dang sub that you don't think one player's playing good enough, which I thought one player was not playing good enough, and that was, JDC.
Okay.
That's just me. I think he's gone after this season because I think we get somebody a little bit younger, but still on that veteran side. And it can work out. I think there's definitely players that are just a little bit younger and can do that are the same, if not better, effective than Juan David Cabezas, but getting a little bit off tactic. It just, I feel like that change could have been made to start the second half early. Kind of risky, but I think it could work out. And then, of course, you get into the 60th minute, maybe 55th, 60th minute, you still see that same thing where RWC can't gain that momentum, can't gain that traction to try and get a couple more shots than they had in that second half. Yeah. I think you make another substitution, not necessarily at the striker side, but again, we work on midfield. You've got so many options. Isidro Martinez, for crying out loud, is on the bench. Again, you could sub
Ollie Wright.
Exactly. Ollie Wright. So you had options. You just chose not to use them when you could have needed them because, again, these players looked gassed. They looked tired in the second half around that time that I'm saying. That was where I felt like he messed up. Yes, hindsight's 2020 and all that, but you gotta try something. At the end of the day, I'd rather you literally go all in then you conserve before it's too late and they're gassed, and all of a sudden 3 straight goals come from your opponent. Seen that way too many times already this year, and it wasn't from RGV FC. So a little bit of other anger, but it's the same deal. You don't stay fragment. You don't stay stagnant or whatever. You don't stay the same. You gotta change it up, especially when you're already behind in the first half. Yeah, no goals were scored, but I felt like we were way behind just in everything against the team that was just demolishing us on the field.
So my question to you, when you see this, when you mentioned about the substitutions, was Wilmer Cabrera playing for the extra time?
100%. There's no way he wasn't. And it sucks. It sucks that he was playing for it, but I could tell from the start. I'm like, he's definitely playing for extra time. He's definitely saving his subs for that. But at that time, I was getting more and more nervous as the game got later and later into the game, and all of a sudden you see it once again.
Where did we see that? When did we see that before?
San Antonio, right?
Yes, but a little bit closer.
I can't necessarily comment.
Houston about Dynamo versus RGV in the Open Cup.
Yes, that was brought up to me several times as well. And I feel that, and I see that now. But the only difference was RGVFC went down 1-0 in the first half in that game, and then came back, tied it up, and then lost again. But your point is, closer to the end of the game, he was doing that exact same thing. Yeah,
because they were drawn. They were drawn.
They were drawn, exactly.
And he was holding on to his substitutions. Then all of a sudden, I guess he was not expecting for RGVFC legend Sam Junkwa to score that game-winning goal so close to the end of the match.
Yep.
But I know I told you that I felt like it wasn't really 100% Wilmer's fault. Partially, maybe. But then again, it would be very hypocritical of me to absolve Wilmer of any blame.
Yeah.
Because of this. Let me tell you why. How many times did I say about Wilmer Cabrera? Wilmer Cabrera is a good coach because he's instilled his play style on it, and they're creating chances. The coach's job is to lead your players to a chance on goal, to create those chances to score the goal. A good coach does that.
Yes.
Well, what happened in this game? RGV could not create chances. So it's up to the coach to make the necessary changes to be able to lead your team towards chances. And it didn't happen.
No.
So I kind of, now the way I'm seeing this, I'm kind of leaning into giving some responsibility to Wilmer.
Yeah.
Which is surprising considering his experience, that he would kind of make those same mistakes, like I mentioned to John a little while ago, the same mistakes that we thought we had left behind.
No, I completely agree. We're on the same track here, Edson. It's true. It's frustrating for sure. Looking back on it and just seeing that he was too selfish, or not selfish, but he too in his same mindset of, I need to do this. I'm on the road. If not, we're not going to win this game. Well, he did that and they still lost. So yeah, it is frustrating. He is still a good coach. Don't get me wrong, because he took this team to the playoffs for the second straight year.
Exactly.
But we, as fans and even as media, especially now, kind of expected more. Now, granted, we weren't the last seed, because apparently the last seed has some type of magical powers, not going to lie, because twice now the final seed last year was the 6th seed, beat the 2 seed, beat the 1 seed last year, which was Phoenix Rising. And then this year, Oakland Roots, the 7th seed, beats the The 2 seed. So yeah, there are some magical powers with the last seed for some strange reason in the USL West, but it just I don't know. It's frustrating. We just expect more, even though we came in, with such a great season, just 6th place. It's one of those things where now playoffs feels like it's not enough. It's making it out of the first round of the playoffs, even though we've only done that once out of 3 times we've been in playoff contention.
I know that when on Saturday the Striker Texas cast had a Twitter space, and we had Nicholas Murray from the USL Championship on, and I know one of the questions that was asked to me, and this was keep in mind this was before before the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
They asked me, if RGV were to lose this match, would the fans feel like there was some sort or disappointment? Would they be disappointed, or they would see that the positive, the fact, or would they feel happy enough with the fact that they were able to revert a very dangerous situation from the middle of the season to actually making it into playoffs? And I think for me at that time, I was like, no, I wouldn't be very disappointed about the situation, about if we were to lose. But I think the way things played out, it was one of those things where it's like, man, I feel like maybe they could have done more. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily disappointed, but it's just that little question that kind of knocks your mind, like, what could have been done differently? Right. Because I honestly, I applaud the players for what they did this season, and being able to, keep their focus, trusting Wilmer, and getting us to where we ended up getting.
Yep.
But it's just so different. Like once the realization of you're out of the playoffs, and the way that it happened, where you got all these situations that just went against you. It's like, what do we do now? Like, how do I feel? How am I supposed to feel?
Yeah. I think as a fan, no matter what, you're always going to feel disappointed, PO'd, upset, and feel like, the world was against you in that game, basically, that you got eliminated. And I think that's completely fair in every length of it, every single thing. But yeah, I feel like definitely through the game, it feels like any other regular season game that you lose, because I guess I can also put it this way. Here, I'll rephrase whatever I said. Is RGV FC's first round of the playoffs was not against I want to call them Sacramento Republic. Don't know why that's on my mind. That Phoenix is completely the wrong team. Not even them either. Who did we just play? Colorado Springs. Don't know why I wanted to say Sacramento. Just did. Okay. Shout out Sacramento. There we go. But yeah, no, against Colorado. It was not against Colorado Springs. No, it was against Monterey Bay. It was against, even before, we could go back and say what Wilmer Cabrera kept preaching. Every single game was our playoffs to get here, to get to the actual playoffs. But in reality, of course, yes, that's not even remotely true, because the playoffs start when the playoffs officially start. But just feeling like it was do or die, especially Saturday night 2 weeks ago.
Do you think that maybe do you think that the way I'm kind of analyzing this, what you're just saying, do you think that maybe coach and the players might have lost a little bit of that hunger that they had? Because I think what you're saying is they were so focused on the regular season being finals or being knockout stages, that when it actually came time to the knockout stages, they forgot how they had played like a knockout stage in the last couple of games.
A little bit. I would definitely say it was a little bit. I'm not going to, completely flame them and say, no, they lost everything and this is terrible. No, yeah, I'm sure. Because when you accomplish something, and we all know we were in the press conference, we could see how happy these players were coming into the locker room. Like, yes, they were partying, they were celebrating. Like, guess what? We freaking made the playoffs. This hard work's paid off. It probably calmed down a little bit. Hopefully, practice. I don't know if they still kept the same schedule for playoffs, if they had practice on that Sunday after the game like they normally do. I would have to guess that they did, but definitely I would have to agree and say that some hunger was definitely lost. And going back to it, yes, it is difficult to. It's not as bad of a flight. It's like 2 hours from even Houston and 2 hours from Dallas, so it's not terrible. But and you get an hour back of sleep. Of course, yeah, you can't. It's difficult to say what hurt, but for sure, I think yes, a little bit of hunger might have been lost, and that's okay as long as you can just regain it when you get onto the pitch. Because I'm sure all those nerves and all that was back to, we've got a game. It does not matter. We got to win this.
So let's take a look real quick at the messages. So obviously, we've got a couple of spam messages in the chat that actually made it as well to the screen, so don't watch there. But anyway, want to thank Travis Ricketts for hopping on, and of course Abraham Moreno. He says, "What's up, guys?" Then he also says, "Yes, we're happy they advanced, especially coming out of the rut they were in mid-season. But truthfully, they were on a high in the tail end of the season that just tapered in the playoffs." So I think that Abraham kind of has a similar outlook to what you just mentioned, Jacob. It's just one of those things, like, we're happy, but it's like, what could have been done better. But moving on to another thing I wanted to talk about, and what John mentioned, offensively, 0% crossing accuracy. 5 total shots, all of them from outside the box. Only one of them was on target, and it was extremely easy for Colorado's goalkeeper to cradle that in his arms. Really bad performance for the offense when we really needed it the most. Now, keep this into consideration. We did lose Tyler Derrick in the 29th minute, 33rd minute. He gets substituted. Gets an aggressive knee to the head by Elvis Samo. Referee calls it a yellow. Bullshit. Or actually, hold on. That should have been a red.
Yep.
No cap. That was clear aggression. That was, the ball wasn't even in play at that time. There was no way that Elvis Samo could have gotten to that ball before Tyler Derrick did. That was a blatant attempt by Elvis Samo to cause harm on a fellow player, right? Even if it's in the other team. Now, one of the things could be said, like, well, he was midair, well, how many times have we seen where a player is mid-tackle, knows that he is going to be late, and he bends their knee or moves in a way to try to avoid making a full-on contact on the opposing player to at least try to minimize any potential damage that contact is going to incur on them. I saw no attempt of that from Elvis Samo.
Yeah, I didn't either. It's true. And they showed that replay what felt like hundreds of times, even on the broadcast, which is crazy. Yeah, there's nothing more to say, but he still went with it. He did not bend his knee back. And I remember some game, I think it was in the U20 World Cup for U.S. Women's National Team.
Mm-hmm.
And a red card got ascended from the opposing team because of a bend of the knee. It could have been a different game, but my point is there was no red card, which was completely just kind of bull to me. But at that same time, it's because they bent their knee. They knew that contact was going to be made. They tried to limit it. But there was no limiting it, as there was literally, a scrape from the player. So it's just, yeah, Elvis didn't try and still got away with it, which is just, say what you will. Paid refs, obviously not. It's just pro refs being pro refs, but still,
that's true.
That's that's the worst thing.
And y'all know that we're not ones to say, oh, a loss is specifically blame to the referees. No. You guys know we're not like that. We're not saying, oh, we lost because of the refs. We already talked about why RGV lost in a tactical sense, but it doesn't help when you have these horrible decisions by the referees that influence the outcome of the game, because now you're talking about a
11v11 instead of 10v11. That was the biggest difference. What happens if it is 10v11?
Not only that, but here's the thing. Who did you know how John talked about Wheeler when he was brought in? He scored the goals. He was influential at the end. Who did he sub in for?
Yeah, Wheeler might not have even played because he was subbed for.
Or he could have played, but he would have
been subbed for somebody else.
Yeah, they would have had to sacrifice a player from another position, maybe in the midfield, maybe in the defense, to bring in Wheeler to help them out on the attack.
And even that's tough to say too, because it's you need defense to stop against 11 players when you only have 10. Seen this constantly here not too long ago. Shout out Vancouver Canucks for throwing everybody possible under the freaking bus. Get your act together. Sorry, didn't want to bring them up, but I mean it brings back that memory of 11v freaking 10 instead of 4v5 for penalty kills. But that is for sure not here, and it will be some other place. But enough from my stupid rants.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, we're pissed off at Elvis and Mo for what he did. Unfortunately, it seems that there's been a couple of people that have kind of taken their anger on Elvis a little bit too far. The only thing I'm going to say is there's no need to harass, despite of what he did, which caused, and I think you mentioned, Jacob, that they said in the broadcast that Tyler Derrick had concussion symptoms.
He couldn't walk straight either, too. Yeah, he definitely had concussion symptoms. He could barely stand up. He looked like a drunk guy out in front of Fast Eddie's at 3 a.m.
Yeah, he had to be escorted out by Eric Pimentel and the trainer. Like, they had to carry him in his shoulders. But the point I'm trying to make is, despite that, it's not on us as fans to try to ask for justice by harassing on social media the player, telling him to F off, blah, 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 blah. What's that going to gain? You have nothing to gain from that, and you have everything to lose.
Definitely.
Especially if you're representing an organization that represents the team. When somebody else from another fan base, or even within the fan base, start seeing you post this expletive filled rant, and I know I was going to talk to him in person, but I've just been too busy, and but with this person, it was like tirade after tirade to tirade. Like, even said, like, I'm not going to stop tweeting at you until you block me. And it's like, what's the point? You're not going to get justice out of it. It's on RGV to ask for the USL to do something about it. It's not on us. What can we do? Right?
Exactly.
And tweeting at them is not going to get Tyler Derrick unhurt, right? Whether he looks like he remorseful or he didn't appear to have any remorse. I'm talking about Elvis Samo. There's nothing we can do. Harassing just isn't the answer. And I know a lot of people that are a little bit more into or more passionate might say that, oh, pecho frío o lo que sea, but I think at the end of the day, like, and it would be hypocritical of me, right, for me to say don't do that, because I have done that in the past before, right? Whether it's tweeting at Justin Marks, telling him he better get Daniel Suarez's pit crew a beating for making all these mistakes, or telling Piojo or David Faitelson about the punch that Cuauhtemoc Blanco gave him a couple of years ago back in the 90s. So it would be hypocritical of me to say, oh, I've never done this, or, be like acting like a saint. But because of that, I've known that it doesn't lead you anywhere, because they can always, ignore the tweet. And it's not like you're a person of influence to them that say, oh, you know what, this guy's right, I need to change. It's not going to happen. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. And, I appreciate what the fan base does, but sometimes, we got to call a spade about this. It just makes us as a fan base overall look bad.
Exactly. I mean, it's been time and time again where it just, stuff like this happens. I see it all the time on F1 Twitter. And guess what? Multiple people, because of that, have been canceled and gotten fired from their jobs. We've seen it with political stuff too. And again, you have everything to lose, nothing to gain, because they also control your fate when you send a tweet like that. And even if you delete it, guess what? They could easily screenshot that. And if they really, really wanted to go further in action, they could, because guess what? You're also now a cyberbullier too. And that's also a criminal offense, especially when you get over the age of 17. So that's a serious thing. Yes, of course, you could get let off easy if it's your first offense, but still, it's stuff like that that's a problem. I've read up on it because, well, let's just say I've been cyberbullied before. And yeah, no, that irks me to hear that type of freaking stuff that people have, said that to Elvis Samo. I understand their frustration. I understood their frustration at night, but taking it further and continuing and harassing, that's not okay in the slightest. And here's the freaking door. You can leave if you're going to be that way, especially after a game, because at the end of the day, this is freaking sports. You don't know the person on the other end. The person on the other end most likely is not your friend, especially from the visiting team. So that is a big thing to remember, because at the end of the day, this is for entertainment purposes only. Remember the pandemic when we didn't have sports? Yeah.
Not only that, I think people need to realize that soccer is the most important thing of the least important things in life. So we can't let it get to you at such a manner, right? And I'm not going to go to that extreme and say, oh, they can just go away if they're going to be like that. I always felt like there's a moment where you can still kind of like get them to kind of change, kind of give them the benefit of the doubt to change for the better. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, a couple of years ago, I had an issue with El Batallón from the Houston Dynamo. And to me, their leadership at the time, they were just too far gone to be saved, right? I called them out for, some tweets that some of the members were mentioning, saying, oh, they were better fans than the rest because they made the trip to Guatemala. Called them out on their BS. Got into a whole Twitter argument about it. A couple of days later, back when I was in Generation Orange with Sean Ringrose, he had asked me to send an invite to their leader to be on the show to kind of get an interview. The guy accepted. Later, for a couple of minutes later, finds that Twitter argument, sends me a screenshot, says, "Is this you?" I told him, "Yeah, that's me." He's like, "Well, I'm not going to be on your show if you're gonna be talking out of your ass like that." So it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, if you're going to be acting like that, or you're going to be promoting violence, like I've seen them before, whether in social media or even in real life, that's not the kind of people that we want. And you've already shown that you have no remorse and that you're too far gone to be saved, right? But I think at this point, the RGB fan base is still in its infant stages to kind of learn about what's right and what's wrong. Because let's be honest, guys, this is not Mexico. This is not Latin America. This is not the hooligan culture of England or Europe. This is the United States. In the United States, soccer culture is a bit more progressive, a bit more open and welcoming. There really is no need for hooliganism in the United States. We've seen it. How many times have there been, other fan bases, calling other supporters groups out for all of this stuff? Hey, there's no need to get into the national, in the eyes of the national media or the USL Twitter for this. I mean, I just hope that it was just kind of like a spur of the moment thing, and then now everything's kind of back to normal. But I just wanted to be sure that we do our diligence as media and as people with. I hate the word influencers, right? Because I don't consider myself an influencer, but I do know that there's a lot of people that listen to us, and kind of our opinions kind of help them learn, or give them a new perspective. And it's our responsibility to call out people and say what isn't right. And I wanted to take this moment, Jacob, I'm pretty sure you do as well, to nip this in the bud before it gets any worse.
Yeah, exactly. Because the last thing that we need is just stupid stuff like that. I think we've had it before, technically. We just don't need it anymore, and it's true. And yeah, and also if you don't feel like or you as a fan is not being heard, well, you're definitely being heard, at least by us
and front office too.
Exactly. You are being heard by front office. It is true. Things are going to get better, but at the same time, with that and with getting more fans, because the responsibility of just some of us to be able to let everybody understand, hey, look, this is what's okay and this is what's not okay. And for one thing, harassing on freaking line is not okay. And harassing in person up to harassing in general is not okay. Let's make that 100% clear. Yes, you can still technically, yell at the goalkeeper. Just don't friggin', I don't know, say anything derogatory or anything crazy like that if you're a crazy
or get the family involved.
Exactly. It's up to a certain part or certain extent for sure. There's being a fan, and then there's just being an ass.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's different ways to put pressure. There's different ways of shit talking that are acceptable, but then there's this fine line, and once you cross it, it's like, buddy, that's a little bit cringe, right? So, I don't know. At the end of the day, we can say all we want, but it's up to you all as a fan base if you want to listen to us or not. We're just kind of, and I know our opinion wasn't asked about it, but I just, like I mentioned, I really wasn't feeling comfortable to just let it, just sweep it under the rug, So
Exactly. That's not what we are. We're not people that want to sweep bad stuff from RGVFC under the rug. That does need to be talked about. That is true. It's shout out on you for catching that, Edson, because I did not catch that, and I know the stuff that you're talking about, and I didn't see it online. And now that you brought it up, it's like, yeah, it's not going to cut it. We're not going to be those people that just let that slide for sure. And this is not for clout. This is not for anything like that. I truly believe that there's no room for that at this club. This club is supposed to be nice and friendly. Guess what? Guess what we started at this. Guess what we had to talk about at the start of the year, Edson?
Yeah,
fans
homophobia.
being exactly, and fans not being good too on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, it's not fans not being good on the road. It's fans that weren't being good still on Twitter, but that still does not take the fact away that there's still that's unacceptable here.
That just to kind of wrap this topic up, there's a mantra that I want you all to kind of understand, and it goes for me as well. Like I mentioned, I've been guilty of it on Twitter, a little bit jokingly and ironic, but I have kind of done this before. But if you cannot say, if what you're putting on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram is not something you are willing to say to a person in their face, don't say it at all.
Yeah, or also think about it this way. If you were to actually say what you did say on Twitter to that person in their face, would you get a swing? Meaning, would they throw hands? Would they swing at you when you said that exactly?
Or if they tell that to you, would you throw hands?
Yeah, exactly. It goes both ways.
Exactly. So, let's get ourselves off of this moral high ground. Just kidding, guys. So just real quick, right? There's this whole issue about, was there a handball in the first goal? That raised a lot of questions, not only from RGV fans, but even Colorado Springs Switchbacks fans put on Twitter, that was a handball. Even last week's guest, Ben, even he told me, dude, that was 100% a handball. It was right in front of me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, watching it live, you kind of missed it. But then when you saw that replay, and they showed the replay of the first goal a good amount too. And I was with the Stampede. I was with Nick and Michael and all the guys. And we saw it. We were like, hold up. That looks like a hand was touched there. Sure enough. Yeah. And then listening back to the broadcast even too, it's like his arm was in the commentators, I remember them saying this. His arm was in a natural position. I'm like, wait, what? That doesn't look like a natural position. That does not look like a natural position in the slightest. You kidding me? So yeah, I mean, that was just bad. Like, his hand was like this, and apparently the commentator was like, "Oh yeah, that's a natural position." I mean, who doesn't play soccer with their hand extended like that to try to make sure the ball doesn't get away from you? Like, no, like in what alternate universe is that not a handball? Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous. There's two wrongs here. Obviously, the referee for not seeing, or the linesman for not seeing that handball, and number two, the commentators for trying to cover it up and doing all these gymnastics to justify this blatant bad call. right?
Mhm.
So I think we can agree that this was a handball. So now the first goal comes, like I said, comes in the 85th minute. RGV in their desperation to try to find an equalizer, raise up their lines. Michi Galina take its advantage with his speed. Second and third goal pretty much came from situations like that. Third goal, Eric Pimentel. I don't know what the hell he was doing, trying to control the ball like that. He just ends up giving it away to the Colorado Switchbacks player. I don't remember off the top of my head who it was. It was Steven Echeverria. And that opened up that was the third goal. That was the final nail in the coffin. RGV FC is now eliminated. It's so it's just sad. But unfortunately, it's now silly season. And while a lot of fans, like I said, have been taking it well, I have been seeing some people kind of say, burn it all down. Get all these players and coaches out of here. Quema or no quema, ka? Last thing before we go, Jacob. Last thing before we go. Quema or no quema?
Not even that. It's also, what an idiot. Sorry, I mean that's a little too harsh, but at the same time, it's
okay,
like, really?
Okay. What's his name? Brett from Door Bumper Clear.
I don't know. I know TJ Majors and Frank, and that's about it. Or not Frank. Freddie.
Brett Griffin. Okay,
yeah,
Brett Griffin.
I unfollowed him with his takes too.
Yeah,
just at least for now, because his takes on Carson Hocevar are just a little too extreme. I understand most of them, but it's just a little too much for me. And I'm like, okay, I don't need that negativity. But besides that, getting off topic a little bit, it's just, look, what made us go to the freaking playoffs? This team that we have, the coach that we have. I'm sorry, Tristan. Phenomenal assistant coach. Might not be the best head coach. Sorry, Jerson. Just my thoughts. Prove me wrong and go to the playoffs with the team.
Here. Oh boy.
It's okay. It's okay. I would actually say it to his face. I was like, we were average when he was head coach and we missed the playoffs barely.
I still think that it was because of the personnel that we had on the field. I don't think it was because of coaches.
True. I'm missing one big factor. He was with Houston Dynamo. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
I mean, it's kind of like asking Kyle Larson. It's kind of like asking Kyle Larson to win a championship in a Rick Ware racing car. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen in that car, but it could happen in the 34. Just saying, if he was brought by a Front Row Motorsports, could have happened. But besides that, it's just everybody that was there this year, everybody that was brought on as well, made a difference in this car. Wow, made a difference in this team. Made a difference in this car as well. You could put the team in, like a car, not in this car, not in this car. There's a whole other meme to that as well. I'll show it to you later, Edson. But it's true. This is, like we've been saying all season, one of the best bases we've ever freaking had, base teams. This foundation is great. Sorry, well, okay, not great. Foundation, it's always good to have a foundation. Let me put it this way. This team is so close to being great, so close to being that team that, again, shocks the whole USL, goes on a win streak, goes on a shutout streak even, I would say. I think we're missing just maybe a couple of key players. And what I mean by that is maybe having more players that could push on the bench, possibly. A super sub again. I I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that could be better for next season. But people saying destroy it? Are you freaking kidding me? Do you not remember 2017, 18, 19, and 20? Because apparently you don't. Because those were some sad years for RGV FC where barely anybody ever showed up to the stadium, not only because of marketing, because the team was bad. That's a good way. That's a good thing to bring up. My point still stands that this team has never been better since 2016.
And we don't even have to go back that far. Just this season, dude. Mm-hmm. It's like, how much did we struggle? How much time did we waste with players like Adolfo Hernandez, with Luka Malasevich, Stefan Miller, because we pretty much prepared this team at the last minute. Why? Because we let all of our, 80% of our players go. And you want us to go back and do that again? When you have a decent foundation, it's not, I think a lot of people forget that this is not a Louisville City. This team is not a Louisville City. It is not a Phoenix Rising. It is not a Tampa Bay Rowdies. It is not a team that is traditionally a championship winning team. This is a team in a process to become that.
Yeah.
To come in with the expectation that we have to win the championship, if not everybody needs to go, that's very short-sighted in my opinion. And I think that you need to put yourself in reality. This team was not designed to win a championship in its first year. I think last year's team was a little bit more designed for that.
Yeah, exactly, because we had Roro and a couple of other players. Which
Vicente.
I think exactly. Which I'm sorry, I thought of something. Hey, Wilmer, if you're listening, or Jerson, if you're listening, let's get some height. I think that could actually be the key factor that we've been missing. Getting some height for the boxes, for crosses, that could actually be fun and work. That I just literally thought of it right now. I'm not even kidding. Because I'm just like, wait, we had Roro and we were pretty successful in the air last year. Maybe that's something to look for in the offseason. That would be pretty fun, Edson. That was just off the top of my head.
Yeah, so, definitely agree.
So yeah, I mean, sure, we're upset that we freaking lost. But just like last year, this is a different upset. This is like, okay, I like where this is heading. I like this process. Next year. I think give it 2 years with building with this squad. And by year 3, there could be a shot. If this structure stays the same with a lot of these key players, by year 3, there could be a chance that we not only fight for the Western Conference Finals, but have a chance to go for gold, have a chance to go for that cup.
And I know people are going to hate the comparison that I'm going to do, but look at San Antonio. How long did it take them?
Oh yeah,
to get where they're at right now?
This is
obviously
fair.
we have to wait until what happens on Friday against Oakland Roots.
I'm
still rooting for Oakland. I'm still rooting for Oakland Roots. I'm not gonna lie to you about that. Go Chuy, go Juana Socar. Anyway, but what I was notice that I didn't say Paul Blanchett. You guys will get the reference. But anyway, what I'm getting at is, how long did it take for San Antonio to get where they're at right now? The best team in the USL League record-wise. They won the Supporters' Shield. How long did it take them? A couple of years under, I forgot the name of the first coach. And then you still needed 2 years of Alan Marcina, who pretty much built off of what his predecessor had built at San Antonio FC, and look where they're at right now.
Yep.
It takes time. And I think people need to understand that Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yep.
You know, as much flack as we give Wilmer for this or that, it's minute details. What did we say in the middle of the season? Wilmer Cabrera has an identity.
Mm-hmm.
There are some teams out there who had coaches for 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, and they still don't have a clear identity on how they want to play. RGV from day one had it.
Yeah.
Probably didn't have all the correct pieces, but they had an idea on how they wanted to play. Then you bring in the necessary pieces and you go on the best closing streak in the whole USL to qualify 5th in the and 6th in the USL Championship Western Conference. That is not an easy feat at all.
Mm-hmm. Not an easy feat at all. Could have been 5th if the team that we were playing against in the playoffs actually cared to play in their final game. But that's, of course, in the past. Still just a little salty about that because I would have loved to play against Sacramento Republic just to get their revenge if that would have even happened. But yeah, no, it's true. My favorite quote from Wilmer Cabrera this season, because I never got to hear it in person and only on recordings when he was back with the Houston Dynamo, but this has been his identity for a while. It's like when you get the airport when you're in an airplane, and of course I've only been in first class once, and that was off of luck. Guess
Look
what?
at this guy flexing.
I'm not a first class guy. I prefer coach over anything. I'm not even kidding. But he says when the flight attendant brings you a blanket, the blankets are so short that you only either can cover your feet or your legs or your upper body. He said that a lot, and it's like it's the same with do you want offense or do you want to focus on just defense? And that's what he's talking about. He likes that the defensive coverage, which we've seen very, very well, and that's why we've seen a lot of counterattacks from them throughout this season. So yeah, and I finally got to hear that. That's my favorite quote from him by far, because it's so true. It's like, yes, you could technically focus on both, but at the same time, you're probably going to misstep one. So which one would you rather have?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that mentality, but I guess it is what it is.
That's his identity, though.
That's his identity, and we have to deal with that. But I don't know. I think I've heard a lot of really bad takes, and I think this year so far, this one takes the cake.
Yep.
Why put yourself through a complete
rebuild? Yeah, for no reason.
Yeah.
When this team had something this year,
they have potential. They have something special. They just need like John said, we just need a couple of pieces, especially out in the striker position. That'll put them in at the next level. Get some better bench, right? That you can rely on more, and you might find yourself, challenging the top 3-4 spots in the Western Conference. Make it back to the conference semifinals or even to the finals, But it takes time and patience, and unfortunately, sometimes soccer Twitter just doesn't have patience to a process. I think I don't know if it's because of our recent generations, the millennials, Gen Zs. We're so used to having everything like immediate. I forgot what the term is, but you want everything to be immediate when you want it. Immediate satisfaction. You you buy an item, you want it right now. Or you want it like at most like next day or 2-day delivery from Amazon, right? Whereas before you had to wait like 2-3 weeks for that item that you bought online to arrive at your doorstep. And now it's like it's that standard where it results have to be immediate. If not, I'm looking for somewhere else. And I feel like that's the same The same with soccer. Obviously, there are some coaches where it goes on. And it's like you can tell that this is not going to work, even if we try to give them more time, right? But I guess I'm today. I was kind of up in my moral soapbox a little bit too much a little bit more than usual. But I just, like I said, it's just my opinions at the end of the day. You don't have to agree with me. You just don't be an asshole. That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
Don't be an asshole because because we're all human. Anyway, Jacob, final thoughts because we're at an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been keeping track. I'm like, wait, well, I'm still loving this talk for sure. Edson, I think we could go for another 2 hours, honestly. On this
We'll do it next
season.
week. We'll do it next week because we've got a good topic. We've got our report cards and who we want for which players we want to stay and which ones should leave. That's going to be a good topic when Ray is going to be involved. So
will be a good topic. Oh yeah, then we're for sure going to go for 2.5 hours. I mean, you add another person. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Each of us have like 20-minute takes. It's true. But either way, yeah. Overall, I mean, what a freaking fun season again. Never would I have thought in September we'd be here actually being excited about next season. or not necessarily that we'd be my whole thing is we'd probably be in the off season for the second week in a row, but no, just craziness. Yeah, instead of us talking about fire Wilmer Cabrera, we're like, all right, Wilmer, let's see what you can bring up next year. We're excited for this process, and it's 100% true that who the heck knows what's going to happen, what players can go on loan for us, what players can maybe we can get lucky and I don't know, Dolfo or even Juan David Cabezas goes on sale for, like, we sell kind of a key player, but not really, like a Juan David Cabezas, like I said, or a young bench warmer that kind of did well. Maybe like John Morrissey said, maybe we don't need Frank Lopez, so we sell him and we get $1 million in return, and all of a sudden we've got enough to spend for a good club, just like Colorado Springs does. So who knows what's going to be brought up in the off season. I'm excited and looking forward to that because it's only going to take a next step. And if we get some good players in this off season, I expect big things from Wilmer Cabrera and this club.
Yeah, I think what I said at the end of last season and the beginning of this preseason, I think still stands for right now. I think the morale boost within the fan base is the highest it's ever been. I think the attendance numbers that we mentioned last week are proof that now the fans are starting to understand and get attracted to this team. Now it's up to Wilmer Cabrera to make sure to keep active and during the off season and getting the fans informed, and includes front office as well. Keep this hype going through this off season, so that way, by the time the preseason comes in, and all these announcements have already been made of who comes in, who leaves, it's like the people are pumped for the opening game, and continue to build off. And like you mentioned last week, maybe 6,000, maybe 7,000, or up to almost the 10,000 full capacity of the stadium in the future, right? But obviously, this falls on technical staff and front office. Yep. So let's make it a good one. Looking forward to see what kind of offseason news the Toros bring. And you guys know, whenever there's going to be offseason news, we're going to have an episode of the Down in the Valley podcast, at least a reaction video on our YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe to it if you haven't done so already, if you're watching this live stream or if you're listening to the audio podcast. If you missed any part of this episode, obviously check out your favorite podcasting platform to listen to the audio version, which will be uploaded tomorrow for your listening pleasure. But guys, appreciate you coming on and listening to us ramble for an hour and a half. And obviously the support of when we had John Morrissey a little while ago. So thank you all for your support. We can't do this without you all. I mean, I know Abraham reached out to me after the game, and he really showed his appreciation for us, Jacob. You know, he was very thankful. He mentioned to us that before the season, he wasn't really interested in the soccer, much less interested in the Toros. And with this season, listening to us, going to the games, it's like now he's learning about the sport, taking his family to go see the games, you know. So the fact that if we can help one person to know more about this team, we did our job.
Yeah.
And so we're thankful for the support from everybody that listens to us, for all your shares, for all your likes, for all of your feedback, whether it's positive or constructive criticism. We really, really appreciate it. We want to make this podcast and internet show a better viewing pleasure for you all. Unfortunately, I cannot get rid of my ums. I have tried, so I think that's gonna take a genie. So. But other than that, like I said, we strive to make this enjoyable for all of you. We appreciate your content. Jacob, where can they find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at JakeYoung456, or as well, if you want to see some racing content or a little bit of podcasts about sports, mainly our racing, but just officially released my first Vancouver Canucks podcast, so that should be fun. On the Overreacted Gamer on YouTube again. That's where you can find me, JakeYoung456 on Twitter, and the Overreacted Gamer on YouTube.
And don't forget, during this off season, be sure to go look at the Down in the Valley Gaming YouTube channel. I might have time during the off season to do a couple of gaming stuff with Jacob, with Cesar, with sim racing, with FIFA modding, anything that I can think of, or even just messing around with freaking BeamNG. But be sure to check out the Down in the Valley Gaming channel. I might do something there. But guys, that's gonna be it for tonight. Thank you so much. We'll see each other next week for another episode of the Down in the Valley podcast. Have a good night.